Mortal Kombat is one of the best video game franchises of all time. Not only has it been sparking controversies for nearly 30 years now, it's also one of the most recognizable and iconic video games of our time. Since Mortal Kombat's inception in 1992, it has seen a lot of sequels, remakes, and spin-offs that range from great to absolutely horrible. It's commonplace for this to happen with iconic brands that have been going for a long time, because they eventually just kind of pump out stuff that's just garbage to make money. And yeah, not every single addition to Mortal Kombat has been so glamorous. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. So without further ado, here is every Mortal Kombat ranked worst to best. If you enjoy this kind of content, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications for more. For some reason, in 1997, an action-adventure side-scrolling game called Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero was released. It is without a doubt the worst Mortal Kombat experience on this planet. Everything about this game is just the worst. The graphics are absolutely hideous, the gameplay is boring and generic, the controls hardly work, and the story sucks on a molecular level I didn't even know was possible. This game's entire existence was literally a ploy to capitalize off the popularity of Sub-Zero, and it shows. This is easily one of the worst Mortal Kombat experiences out there. Mortal Kombat Special Forces is a really stinky game. Essentially, in theory, it's a lot like Mortal Kombat Mythologies, though this time it's a generic, horrible-looking top-down hack-and-slash adventure game, and the character focused on is Jax rather than Sub-Zero, a character I really do not care about at all. Like Mythologies, the story here is laughably stupid. The gameplay is monotonous, tedious, and a far cry from what Mortal Kombat normally represents. I'd rather wait in line at the DMV for hours than play this game for 30 minutes. Mortal Kombat Advance was a game that came out in 2001 that for a short period of time actually tainted the Mortal Kombat name quite severely. Essentially, this game was just Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 lazily ported to the Game Boy Advance, though because of technical limitations, the screen was too small for the game to actually be enjoyable. On top of this, there were a ton of hit detection glitches, the frame rate was really bad, the sound design was horrific, the control scheme was so drastically different on GBA from its normal ports that many special moves and brutalities and such were almost impossible to pull off. Overall, this was a pathetic attempt at cashing in on the Mortal Kombat name. Mortal Kombat 11 is the newest Mortal Kombat game out there, and after a couple hours of playing it, I think it's really lackluster. I know many will disagree, and that's fine, feel free to tell me why you disagree in the comments, but personally, I hated Mortal Kombat 11. This game is an embarrassment to Mortal Kombat. For one, the roster is absolutely abysmal. There's like 13 faces here that I have no clue who the hell they are. There's a bunch of unnecessary added characters like RoboCop, the Joker, Spawn, and Rambo. Why? Why couldn't you just add Mortal Kombat characters or bring back old favorites? Why would you just slap a bunch of third-party characters together like fucking Soul Calibur? Not just that, but the DLC dominates this game. It's not pay to win, but it's definitely close. This is an unfortunate trend that started with Mortal Kombat 9 that got worse and worse as the years went on, but this is definitely the worst DLC-wise. Overall, the game plays okay, but it's a boring cash grab that is a complete insult to Mortal Kombat. I certainly hope Mortal Kombat 12 is built from the ground up as a new game and isn't just a rehash of the same things for cash like MK11 is. Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe had a lot of potential at first. The idea of being able to rip Batman's head off as Scorpion was initially very appealing. However, stubborn DC executives ruined any potential this game had by enforcing a T for teen rating on the game, as they didn't want their family-friendly superhero brands associated with M-rated violence. So with that I ask, if you guys are so worried about your precious brands being associated with M ratings, why would you collaborate with Mortal Kombat, the most notoriously violent video game in the world? Anyway, Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe is an absolute mess. The story hardly makes any sense and really seems like it was just a stretch created by executives who wanted to cash in. The gameplay feels very watered down and muted due to the T rating, there's hardly any blood at all, the fatalities are all extremely lame, and it's just very hard to take this game even remotely seriously. So now we're getting to the more mediocre section of this list rather than just outright bad. Mortal Kombat 4 really did try hard to be a good game, and for a PS1 and N64 game, the graphics were pretty impressive. The controls were okay, and the violence was definitely there, but this game did quite a few things wrong enough to where I'd consider it a mediocre experience. For one, its gameplay was just kinda awkward with the new wonky 3D graphics and all. This was the first 3D Mortal Kombat, so it makes sense that there were a lot of mistakes made with how the gameplay flows. A lot of moments and cutscenes in this game are also comically bad, and it's just really not a game that I'd go out of my way to ever play. And I don't really recommend you do either, unless you're a die-hard Mortal Kombat fan. It's not bad, but it's been technologically dominated by its successors in every single way, and there's no reason to go back. Mortal Kombat on the DS sounds bad, and it kinda honestly is, but this version pulls it off okay. A lot of my complaints with Mortal Kombat Advance still kinda remain with this version, but it's not too bad. It's just not my preferred way to experience this game, and I'm pretty uninterested in this game as a whole. I wouldn't recommend going out of your way to play it. So now we're at the meh games that are okay, but not really anything to write home about. Shaolin Monks is honestly one of those games. It's functional, it's a decent time when with friends, but it feels so loosely connected to Mortal Kombat. I really don't like when Mortal Kombat tries to stray out of fighting, it doesn't work. I wasn't a fan of the gameplay changes, and part of that is just because I have very little interest in the backstories of these two characters. The only characters from Mortal Kombat I really care about are Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Quan Chi, and Noob Saibot. Everyone else on the roster I either couldn't give two shits about, or they're characters I rarely use. Overall, this game is fine, and you'll have a fine time playing it more than likely, but it's just not a game I ever come back to. Mortal Kombat Tournament Edition is one of the more underrated MK titles in my opinion. For being a Game Boy Advance game, this game is extremely impressive. This game's essentially the Game Boy port of Deadly Alliance, and the graphics, gameplay, and overall features are way ahead of the GBA's time. I mean, just look at this. The game has a decent roster, quite a bit to do, it controls pretty tightly, and I actually played this game about as long as I would the PS2 version. This is a fantastic little port of Deadly Alliance. Mortal Kombat Unchained is a decent Mortal Kombat game that has been tightly packed onto the PSP, and that's really all it has going for it. It's just a bad port of Deception, honestly. This game is pretty impressive, and it has almost every single feature from the PS2 version of the game, which is a pretty good accomplishment, though these days there's really nothing drawing me to this game. I can admire its definite quality as a Mortal Kombat game, but it's just simply not anything to freak out about. And without skipping a beat, we're going to talk about Mortal Kombat Deception. Now, I consider the relevant Mortal Kombats to be anything after Deadly Alliance, and of the relevant titles, I think that Mortal Kombat Deception is definitely the weakest of the bunch. For one, it just doesn't have very many characters, and the characters it does have are very limited and uninteresting. In fact, this may be one of the worst rosters in any of the Mortal Kombat games. Its maps aren't very interesting, its story could jump off a bridge. I really don't care for this game, but it is objectively better than the other games on this list so far, and it is a real full Mortal Kombat experience, just not a very thrilling one. Mortal Kombat 2 is a decent game with a decent roster and pretty cool map design. It's a classic game and all, but honestly, Mortal Kombat 3 improves on it in every way, shape, and form, and even Mortal Kombat 1 is more significant than 2 in my opinion, because 1 at least stands out stylistically far more. There's not much to say. Mortal Kombat 2 is a very basic, by-the-books Mortal Kombat game, but it's still fun to play in multiplayer, and is a classic. So now we're getting to the decent to good games, and I know some people are going to flip out over this because they love Mortal Kombat X, but at best, I really think that Mortal Kombat 10 is a decent game. Its graphics are great, its roster is pretty fulfilling. I think that the DLC characters were pretty appropriate, unlike in Mortal Kombat 11, where they just slapped together whatever licenses they could afford. Jason and Leatherface are awesome additions to Mortal Kombat, though I'm gonna be honest, I really don't like how they modeled Jason. That does not look like Jason. The fatalities and move list are fairly well made, and this is a pretty solid release, though it just can't really compete with some of its predecessors because it's just really not that inventive of a game. It also plays a lot like Injustice Gods Among Us, which in my humble opinion is a very mediocre fighting game, and it's just not anything special. It'll probably be forgotten relatively quickly in the future when other Mortal Kombats release. Mortal Kombat Trilogy is actually a very decent little experience. I'd argue it's actually one of the best fighting games on the PlayStation 1. The roster is pretty large for a 2D Mortal Kombat game, and the movesets are massive, making this one of the best retro Mortal Kombat experiences you can have. This game holds up very well to this day, and I couldn't recommend it enough. Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance was one of the first next-gen Mortal Kombat games back in like 2002. This game just oozes style. It's so well crafted, and the roster may be small, but it's pretty effective because the characters are pretty interesting in this one, and the game just generally makes up for it with large movesets and awesome map design. This game perfected what a 3D Mortal Kombat should feel like, and I'd rank this as one of the better games out there. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 is a game I have so much history with, and it is just incredible, especially when played on a SNES Classic, which is the ultimate way to experience this game. The controls are very tight and snappy, the graphics are incredible for the time, the roster is classic and fulfilling, and the game just holds up like glue all these years later. I would seriously recommend buying a USB SNES controller and emulating the game if you don't have a SNES Classic, because it's just a classic retro experience you can't miss out on. This game is the best PS2 era Mortal Kombat, hands down. Its story is all over the place, as is kind of the norm with the more modern titles as they struggle to find ways to expand the characters' stories for money. But the movesets, graphics, and huge roster are incredible. Most notable is the roster, which features 62 fighters in their best looking form. You can also create your own fighter, which is pretty expansive and cool. The movesets are awesome, and the controls are tight and very functional. The map also offers a lot of challenge in terms of not falling into traps. This is a fantastic Mortal Kombat experience, and I hope in the future they'll make Mortal Kombats with the same kind of gritty feel as Armageddon. Yeah, I know a lot of people will debate this pick, but Mortal Kombat is one of the most classic and playable fighting games of all time. It was the game that started it all, and while the roster and moves lists are very tiny, they're very memorable, and this game is still extremely fun and intuitive to pick up and play with friends in 2020. This game is a nostalgic masterpiece in my mind, and it absolutely deserves to be viewed as a priceless game. And lastly, the best Mortal Kombat in my opinion is Mortal Kombat 9. Mortal Kombat 9 blew me the hell away when it came out. It's just one of the best Mortal Kombats, hand down. This isn't some cheap Injustice ripoff or cash grab like the new games. This game was built from the ground up with its own special physics system and unique gameplay. The game mashes two-dimensional movement with beautiful 3D landscapes as maps. Its roster is also one of the best in the whole series. Not only does it have almost every single iconic, memorable MK character, but it also has some pretty cool DLC, like you could play as Freddy Krueger. On the PS3, you could play as Kratos. It was pretty cool. The story is at its most interesting here, and the overall presentation gets an A+ from me. Mortal Kombat 9 is one of the best fighting games ever made. Anyway, that's all for this video. Leave a like, subscribe, comment, and don't forget to turn on post notifications.